The film begins in the spring of 8th grade at a middle school, where a student named Fukuda almost falls asleep in class. However, he gets distracted when he notices his classmate, Satomi, searching through her pencil case. She seems upset because she's run out of pencils. Kindly, Fukuda offers her one of his own pencils. Satomi is thankful for the help because she usually feels uncomfortable bothering others. To show her gratitude, she splits her eraser in half and gives one part to Fukuda as a thank you gift. Fukuda is moved by her gesture. Although Satomi isn't typically considered pretty, her natural look and sweet smile make her very charming to him. Later, Fukuda tells his friend named Itakura about the eraser Satomi gave him. They have been friends since they were little, and Itakura thinks Fukuda has a crush on Satomi because of the eraser gift. However, Fukuda denies having any feelings. But then, Itakura jokes about throwing the eraser away, and surprisingly, Fukuda agrees. But once Itakura leaves, Fukuda panics, realizing he really cares about the eraser. Soon after, he wildly searches for it in the flower garden and luckily finds it. From that day on, he decides to keep the eraser half because it means a lot to him. A year later, because no students volunteered to perform at the school cultural festival, the homeroom teacher decided to draw names. By chance, Fukuda and Satomi were picked to go on stage together. Needing more group members, he invited Itakura and another classmate named Mori, who was known as a quiet comic book fan and happened to be good-looking. Mori often spent time reading comics in the bathroom, ignoring everything around him. The next day, Itakura suggested they all meet at Fukuda's house to plan their performance. Itakura set this up, hoping to help Fukuda get closer to Satomi. Despite Fukuda insisting he wasn't interested in Satomi, Itakura didn't believe him. He pointed out that Fukuda still kept the half of the eraser he had thrown away, even though he never used it. So, Fukuda went to pick up Satomi. From afar, Fukuda saw Satomi waving at him, which he thought was really cute. This was part of Itakura's plan to get Fukuda and Satomi to spend time together. On their way to Fukuda's house, they stopped at a supermarket for snacks and then saw a shaved ice seller by the river. Satomi wanted some shaved ice, so Fukuda joined her. Eating the colorful ice usually stains your tongue the color of the flavor, but to Fukuda, being with Satomi made everything feel sweeter than usual. Soon after, Fukuda finally invited Satomi to his house for a group project, but because of Itakura's sneaky plan, Itakura told everyone else to arrive 15 minutes late. Fukuda was confused and unsure what to do. There, Itakura suggested that he should share his feelings with Satomi, but instead of doing that, Fukuda just chatted nervously with her. While they were alone, Satomi shared her worries about group projects. She often felt like she wasn't reliable and was bad at speaking in front of others. But there, Fukuda encouraged her, saying he was happy to have her in the group, which cheered her up. He remembered the eraser half she had given him and asked if she still had hers. Satomi looked but remembered her younger brother had taken it. Hearing this, Fukuda felt sad and lost in his thoughts, and before he knew it, the rest of their friends had arrived. At that time, Fukuda wondered if Satomi ever thought about him, even for a moment. He realized it was hard to ignore his feelings for her, especially since he often found himself watching her in class, even though they didn't sit next to each other anymore. Seeing his friend upset, Itakura suggested that if they won first place in the choir at the festival, Fukuda should confess his feelings to Satomi. Motivated by this, Fukuda started practicing harder, and Satomi noticed and joined him for extra practice sessions. They walked home together along the riverbank, where Satomi invited Fukuda to practice singing again. She wanted to show him that regardless of what others thought, she really liked his voice. She told him that even if they didn't win the competition, he would always be first place to her. Fukuda would never forget her words. When he got home, Fukuda decided to write a letter to Satomi, hoping to finally express all his hidden feelings through his words. The next day, the day of the cultural festival finally came. Fukuda and his friends performed really well, but they ended up winning second place. While his friends were happy and celebrating, Fukuda felt sad. He thought that not winning first place meant he couldn't give his letter to Satomi, a letter that meant a lot to him. This was the first time Fukuda had worked so hard for something. Seeing that Fukuda was upset, Satomi tried to cheer him up. She shared the advice her grandfather once gave her that if you fail the first time, try again. Keep trying, and on the third try, a miracle might happen. At that time, Satomi believed that Fukuda wasn't someone who gave up easily. Fukuda smiled, realizing he still had many chances to give Satomi his letter. But he hadn't taken those chances seriously yet. After the festival, their homeroom teacher announced that Satomi would be transferring schools because her dad got a job in Tokyo. This news really opened Fukuda's eyes to the fact that he was about to lose Satomi. Fukuda was sad and confused about why Satomi hadn't mentioned her move to him. But Itakura and Mori encouraged him not to miss his last chance to deliver his letter. They told him it wasn't about having his feelings accepted, because it was about expressing his gratitude, happiness, and affection for Satomi. However, when they got to Satomi's house to deliver the letter, they found out she had already moved. 2 years after Satomi moved away, Fukuda became a junior in high school. During their summer break, he and his 2 friends went to Itakura's grandmother's place, where she ran a fishing gear rental shop on the beach. They decided to work there part-time. Even though it had been 2 years, Fukuda still missed Satomi a lot. He found that the more he tried to forget her, the clearer his memories of her became. While his friends were busy chatting up girls on the beach, Fukuda was alone, writing in the sand. Suddenly, he heard someone call his name. He was shocked to see that it was Satomi. She explained that she and her friends were working part-time at a nearby hot springs inn. At that moment, Fukuda watched her from a distance, noticing how she seemed even cuter than before. Encouraged by his friends, Fukuda asked Satomi to join him for a walk to catch the evening breeze. Satomi thought maybe he was upset with her because they hadn't talked much all day. She felt a bit guilty for not having told him about her move, or even thanking him for his help in the past. As they chatted on the beach, Fukuda pulled out his cell phone, which was still a rare item at that time, especially for Satomi, whose father was very strict. She wanted to buy her own cell phone, which is why she was working at the inn. Lost in conversation, they didn't realize the time, and when they hurried back, they found the inn's doors already locked at 11:30 p.m. Feeling responsible, Fukuda wanted to help. Satomi's room was on the second floor with the window still open. He helped her try to climb up the drainage pipe to get in. As they did, their hands touched briefly, and Fukuda quickly pulled away, embarrassed. The next day, Fukuda got a sudden call from Satomi with some bad news that her younger brother had an accident and broke some bones, so her dad asked her to come home early. At that time, Satomi called Fukuda because she didn't want to leave without saying goodbye properly this time. Fukuda felt down again. He wanted to ask for Satomi's contact number, but remembered she didn't have a cell phone. His friends encouraged him to take her to the train station and maybe even go with her. Soon after, Fukuda quickly rode his bike to catch up with Satomi near the bus stop. Even though the train station was far, he didn't mind and took Satomi on a piggyback ride. Satomi enjoyed seeing the scenery and feeling the sea breeze this way. On the way, they sang Cherry by Yui, a song they had performed together at the cultural festival 2 years ago when they won second place. When they got to the station, Fukuda planned to stay with Satomi until her train left. However, he realized he had forgotten his wallet, which meant he couldn't buy a ticket to stay with her at the platform. At that moment, Satomi ended up buying him a ticket so he could wait with her. Fukuda was upset because he had kept a love letter for Satomi in his wallet, which he always carried as a good luck charm. Suddenly, she asked if Fukuda had a girlfriend now, which caught him off guard and made him wonder why she was so interested in his life. Finally, Fukuda gathered up his courage and told Satomi how much he liked her. Upon hearing that, she was so surprised that she couldn't respond right away. She just stammered a thank you with tears in her eyes, leaving Fukuda unsure if she felt the same way. As they waited for an answer, a train pulled into the station, making Satomi even more nervous. Realizing she might not be able to respond right then, Fukuda quickly wrote his cell phone number on a piece of ticket paper and gave it to her. At that time, Satomi promised to contact him soon, and Fukuda waited eagerly for her call. But the summer ended without any word from her. 2 years later, Fukuda started college in Tokyo and began living on his own. He wasn't following Satomi because he just wanted a change. At that time, Itakura stuck by him, while Mori decided not to go to college and instead worked towards his dream of becoming a cameraman. Itakura was smitten with one of the pretty professors on campus, leading both of them to join her seminar group. During a seminar, Fukuda realized he had forgotten his eraser. He tried asking Itakura for one, but he was too distracted by the professor to notice. Luckily, a kind girl named Kazumi noticed and lent Fukuda her eraser. Once again, Fukuda found himself in a familiar situation when he started developing a crush on Kazumi, the girl who lent him an eraser. At that time, Kazumi seemed to notice that Fukuda often looked sad and thoughtful, and she paid him a lot of attention. There, Itakura noticed Kazumi was getting closer to Fukuda too. Meanwhile, Fukuda's friends thought it would be good for him to open up to someone new, especially since he had been waiting 2 years for a reply from Satomi, who had completely disappeared without a trace. One day, after a seminar, some college friends came over to Fukuda's place. They had fun and ended up spending the night. By chance, Fukuda was sleeping next to Kazumi. In the middle of the night, she woke up and started looking closely at Fukuda's face. When she held his hand, Fukuda woke up, and they ended up kissing. Kazumi asked if she could be his girlfriend, and Fukuda agreed. He was really happy to have someone who texted him every day and cared about him. Kazumi wasn't shy about showing affection at college either, and they had a smooth relationship for almost a year. While bowling one day with Kazumi and Itakura, Fukuda heard a familiar voice. He turned around and thought he saw Satomi entering an elevator. He rushed out of the building after her but couldn't find her. After that, Fukuda always kept an eye out for Satomi whenever he was out. His patience paid off when he unexpectedly ran into her on a train. He was so surprised that he didn't know what to say. Seeing that Satomi now had a cell phone, he felt even more upset because she never contacted him. Satomi explained that she had tried calling Fukuda several times, but each time, an elderly man answered, who she thought was Fukuda's grandfather. This confused Fukuda because his grandfather had passed away. After checking the number, they realized that Satomi had saved Fukuda's number wrong because of a mistake in the digits. Fukuda had quickly written his number on a piece of ticket paper, and a 6 looked like a 0. The man who answered the phone was likely just an old man who responded with simple, "Hello, hello," and "yes, yes," leading Satomi to think she was talking to Fukuda's grandfather. But she had the wrong number. This mix-up made Fukuda think that Satomi had forgotten about him, when in fact, he had given her the wrong number. They didn't have much time to talk further because Satomi had to get off at her station soon. For Fukuda, Satomi was still a special girl he couldn't just forget. This unexpected meeting was the second time they had run into each other by chance. Since then, Fukuda found it hard to think straight cause calling Satomi seemed like he would be betraying Kazumi, his girlfriend. Even though he tried not to call, eventually, he couldn't resist the urge to hear Satomi's voice again. He hoped she wouldn't answer, but to his surprise, Satomi picked up after just one ring. However, the conversation between Fukuda and Satomi was a bit awkward at first since they hadn't spoken for years. At that time, Fukuda didn't plan to bring up the past, but Satomi started to explain the response she hadn't been able to give him before. Realizing it wasn't the right time, Fukuda asked Satomi to forget his old high school confession, saying it was just a crush and that he was really just happy to reconnect with an old friend. He suggested they meet up to catch up and reminisce about their middle school days. Fukuda felt confused, but seeing Satomi's smile made all his worries disappear. Then, she mentioned that Fukuda hadn't changed much and still made her feel comfortable, just like before. Time flew by as they enjoyed their time together, and Fukuda found himself wanting to see her again, so he asked her out for the next Saturday. At the same time, Kazumi wanted to spend that Saturday with him, but Fukuda, determined to see Satomi, lied about having to work a part-time job and getting home late. Instead, he planned a day out with Satomi that included going to the movies. During the movie, Fukuda kept resisting the urge to hold Satomi's hand. Afterwards, they ate shaved ice and even went bowling, doing things that reminded them of old times. Being with her made Fukuda feel like his old, happy self again, as if he was living a dream. When Fukuda got home, he was surprised to find Kazumi in his room. He had completely forgotten that it was their one-year friendship anniversary. Kazumi wasn't mad that he forgot. Saying he needed to go buy drinks, Fukuda quickly left. Outside, he realized how wonderful Kazumi was and felt terrible about himself for not appreciating a girl who truly loved him. At the poolside, Fukuda tried to forget Satomi by throwing away the half of the eraser he'd kept for years. From that day, he stopped contacting Satomi and focused on making things better with Kazumi. Fukuda seemed happy, but he felt empty inside. The more he tried to forget Satomi, the more he thought about her. This was probably because he never got a clear answer from her about his feelings 3 years ago, leaving things unresolved. One day, Fukuda tried calling Satomi just to hear her voice, but he hung up quickly without speaking. Back at his place with his friends, Satomi called back, but Fukuda didn't answer. His odd behavior made Itakura and Mori suspicious. They tried to figure out his phone's password using his and Kazumi's birthdays, but those didn't work. Mori suggested trying Satomi's birthday, which made Fukuda panic. This made it clear to everyone that he still hadn't gotten over Satomi. At that time, Fukuda was tired of running from his friends and finally confessed everything. He admitted that last month, he had bumped into Satomi again and they had hung out together. Feeling guilty for betraying Kazumi, Fukuda started avoiding Satomi and stopped contacting her. Even with his efforts, Fukuda couldn't stop thinking about Satomi. He felt terrible about it and kept it a secret from Itakura and Mori because he was scared they might leave him. But when Itakura and Mori found out, they were disappointed because they had always promised to be honest with each other. However, they understood his reasons and stood by him, ready to support him no matter what. Realizing he couldn't keep lying to Kazumi, Fukuda decided to break up with her. He didn't know if Satomi had feelings for him, but he didn't want to continue deceiving Kazumi. When Fukuda talked to Kazumi, she revealed she had suspected there was another girl but was willing to forgive him and stay together. Kazumi asked if Fukuda had any problems with her, suggesting they shouldn't break up if there weren't any. Despite this, he kept apologizing, feeling it was better to end their relationship. Kazumi was very sad but respected Fukuda's decision to break up. Before she left, she told him that he might regret this decision one day. Kazumi then left for good. Fukuda knew Kazumi was a great girlfriend, the kind many would wish for, but he believed that when it comes to love, it's better to be honest and face the pain now than to live with regret later. After Kazumi left, Fukuda felt unsure of himself, wondering if he was even good enough to be more than just friends with Satomi. He cared about her a lot, even if they were just friends. But there, Mori encouraged Fukuda not to be scared of rejection. He advised Fukuda to share his feelings first and worry about the answers later. Mori explained that even if Satomi didn't feel the same way, it was better for Fukuda to express his feelings so he could eventually move on. Otherwise, if things stayed unclear, Fukuda would remain stuck, unable to end his feelings for Satomi. Feeling a new burst of energy from Mori's advice, Fukuda rushed to the park pond where he had thrown away half of a pencil eraser. Everyone, including his best friend, thought he was acting a bit crazy, but his effort paid off when he actually found the eraser. Then, Fukuda started wondering if Satomi had a boyfriend now, realizing he had always assumed she was single without ever really checking. He decided to call her right away, but a guy answered the phone, saying Satomi was busy making burgers. This response took Fukuda by surprise and left him feeling even more shocked. At night, after seeing Satomi, Fukuda realized that the person who had answered the phone earlier was Satomi's younger brother. They had bumped into each other on the train right after Satomi had broken up with her boyfriend, which was similar to how Fukuda had ended his relationship after reuniting with Satomi. Fukuda had always had feelings for Satomi, and he had even kept the half of the eraser she gave him long ago, treating it like a treasure. Satomi felt comfortable around Fukuda, but she thought of him more as a friend. Since they had both just come out of relationships, Satomi wasn't ready to start a new romantic relationship, worried that she might just be a rebound for Fukuda. Her response left things uncertain, not exactly saying no, but also not ready to say yes. This was the second time Fukuda confessed his feelings to Satomi, and both times they had met by chance. Holding on to Satomi's words about miracles happening if they met a third time, Fukuda decided to delete her number from his phone, thinking that if they were meant to be, fate would bring them together again. Satomi also deleted his number, feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation at the possibility of his words coming true. After this, they went their separate ways. 6 years have passed, and the miracle that Fukuda hoped for never happened. Now 26 years old, Fukuda works at a maintenance company in Tokyo. One morning, his boss introduced him to 2 new employees, Matsudaira and Tatsuya. As their supervisor, Fukuda was tasked with training them. Matsudaira is very serious and hardworking, while Tatsuya is energetic but tends to take his work too lightly. Then, Matsudaira mentioned feeling grateful to have a patient and not too strict senior like Fukuda to guide them. Meanwhile, Itakura now works at a bicycle shop, where he fell in love with the owner's daughter and they got married. And as for Mori, he is still pursuing his dream as an assistant cameraman. One day, a scheduling error at Fukuda's company led to a client complaint. Matsudaira was supposed to handle it, but couldn't be reached, so Fukuda went to apologize to the client himself and managed to smooth things over. Later, when he met Matsudaira, Fukuda firmly scolded him for the oversight. This made Matsudaira cry, not from fear but from sadness because, as Tatsuya revealed, Matsudaira actually had feelings for Fukuda. Tatsuya understood this well, as he had an older sister and knew how emotional situations could get. To make things better, Tatsuya took Fukuda and Matsudaira to a karaoke place to lighten the mood. There, Matsudaira confessed that she had feelings for Fukuda. Unfortunately, he gently turned her down, explaining that his heart was still set on someone else, not because he was her supervisor. Upon hearing that, Matsudaira understood and felt better for having shared her feelings. However, another problem arose when Tatsuya got too drunk and fell asleep at the karaoke place, forcing Fukuda to take him home. When Fukuda reached Tatsuya's apartment, a woman answered the door. At that time, Fukuda thought she was Tatsuya's girlfriend, but it turned out to be Satomi, who quickly apologized for her brother's behavior. Fukuda was stunned cause turns out Tatsuya's older sister was Satomi, the very person he hadn't been able to forget. Feeling nervous, Fukuda blurted out a compliment about Satomi's cute hairstyle, even though he was just trying to find something to say. Meanwhile, Satomi, feeling a bit embarrassed by her appearance, went to tidy up a bit. When Tatsuya woke up, Fukuda mentioned that he and Satomi were classmates in middle school, which surprised Tatsuya. You see, Tatsuya is the same younger brother who had often accidentally messed up Fukuda's attempts to get closer to Satomi over the years, like with the eraser incident, the broken bones, and making burgers. Tatsuya had unknowingly been getting in their way. Now, Tatsuya finally understood that Fukuda had liked his sister since they were in the 8th grade. After not seeing each other for 6 years, Fukuda and Satomi's conversation was a bit awkward. Satomi had moved away because her parents, who had retired, went back to their hometown. There, Fukuda mentioned that he had tried to visit her old house, but by then, Satomi had already moved to Tokyo. Satomi was moved to learn how much Fukuda wanted to see her, and now, their third accidental meeting seemed like fate. Satomi felt this was a sign that they were meant to be together. Gradually, Fukuda reached for her hand, and she held it back. They officially became a couple. After he got home, Fukuda was excited to share this good news with his two friends, who were also happy for him after waiting so long for his love to be realized. However, like any relationship, theirs wasn't perfect. They faced many challenges and obstacles, just like in any true story of life. That year was really busy for both Fukuda and Satomi because of their jobs. When Fukuda had free time, Satomi was usually still working, so it was hard for them to meet up. Even when they did see each other, Fukuda was often so tired from work that he'd fall asleep. Satomi understood and didn't want to wake him up, happy just to be near him, but Fukuda felt differently. This situation made it hard for him to fully enjoy their relationship, and it went on like this for a year. One day, Fukuda took a day off to spend time with Satomi, but it turned out to be the same day as a traditional festival in his hometown, and her parents wanted her to come home. At that time, he didn't want to give up on meeting Satomi, even though she had to help with her supervisor's wedding. He thought the wedding wouldn't last too late and decided he would wait for her to return. Fukuda was really looking forward to seeing Satomi because he planned to propose to her that night. Unfortunately, the wedding went on longer than expected, and Satomi couldn't make it. Hearing the disappointment in Fukuda's voice over the phone, Satomi said she would leave the wedding and come right away. However, because it was already late and he was upset, Fukuda told her not to bother and went home to sulk alone. Eventually, Satomi showed up at his place anyway. Satomi could tell Fukuda was upset with her. Fukuda was especially sad because their first anniversary was the next day, and he felt foolish for believing they were meant to be together. Satomi tried to explain herself, but Fukuda was too upset to listen and told her to leave. With a heavy heart, Satomi said she would go home to clear her mind. She admitted to not feeling good enough for Fukuda. She remembered feeling jealous when she saw a girl approaching Fukuda at the beach, which surprised her. And when Fukuda confessed his love at the train station, She wanted to say yes but was too overwhelmed and happy to speak. Now, thinking they might not be soulmates after all, Satomi decided it was best to leave. After regretting his harsh words and actions, Fukuda tried to catch up with Satomi. He asked her to stay a bit longer, but she just said see you later and left in a taxi. Fukuda felt like giving up, thinking that his 13 years of love were ruined by his own mistakes. That night, he was really upset and felt lost. Suddenly, Mori and Itakura showed up unexpectedly because they sensed that Fukuda was having a tough time. Instead of comforting him, Itakura showed him a video of Kazumi getting married and Fukuda wasn't invited there. In the video, Kazumi wondered if Fukuda regretted not attending. Fukuda felt bad, but more than that, he regretted always hurting the feelings of women who cared about him. His friends knew that Satomi was still very important to Fukuda, and they encouraged him to take action rather than wait for a miracle. Mori brought out old photos that showed Fukuda always looking happy and determined. They told him it was selfish to like someone just because they liked him back, because he should pursue his feelings regardless of the outcome. They also showed him a letter in a green envelope that Fukuda kept as a lucky charm, suggesting he use it as his last effort. Then, Fukuda decided to follow Satomi to her hometown. On the way, they got stuck in traffic because of a festival, but luckily, Itakura had a bicycle in the car. Then, Fukuda used it to continue his journey. Remembering the great times he had with Satomi, especially her smile, gave him the push he needed to keep going. Despite often being a complainer, Fukuda is not the type to give up easily. After a long effort, Fukuda finally made it to Satomi's house late at night. He thought she might be sleeping, but when he called, Satomi answered right away because she hadn't been able to sleep all night. Learning that Fukuda was outside, she came out, and they went together to the riverbank, a place filled with memories from their past. Fukuda confessed that he had been mistaken, always thinking their relationship was purely due to some miracle. He had believed that if they were soulmates, everything would always be happy, but he realized that real relationships face challenges. While fate might have brought them together initially, he knows that fulfilling their destiny need ongoing effort. Satomi was moved to tears when she realized Fukuda had ridden his bicycle all that way just to see her. However, Fukuda hadn't come just to apologize. He also wanted to share a letter he had written 13 years ago, expressing his true feelings for her. At that time, Satomi was surprised to learn about this old letter, which she had never known about. In the letter, Fukuda started by asking how Satomi was doing. He then admitted his feelings straightforwardly, saying he liked her and that his love had only grown stronger since the times they spent singing together on the riverbank. There, Satomi responded by telling Fukuda that he was still her number one. Fukuda was thrilled to hear this, but he was worried about the possibility of not being able to see her again. He promised Satomi that if she ever needed him, he would be there, no matter what. Fukuda vowed to always care for her. After reading the letter, Satomi couldn't hold back her tears. The words were simple and heartfelt, like those of someone just learning to write letters, yet they deeply touched her. Perhaps it was meant to be that she read the letter only now. If she had read it back in middle school, it might not have meant as much to her. But after seeing all the effort Fukuda had put in over the years, she could see the truth in his words. Even now, Satomi still saw Fukuda as the person she admired, with feelings that hadn't changed at all. Fukuda then gave Satomi a ring, asking her to marry him. It didn't take long for her to say yes. She only had one wish: that Fukuda would always stay by her side, and that they would work together for their happiness. From that day, their story of wanting to meet, touch, and love each other both now and forever began. Finally, Fukuda and Satomi officially became husband and wife. Marriage isn't just about the happy times. They still had their share of fights and disagreements. Through these, they learned that life is a colorful journey, that sometimes it's sunny and sometimes it's cloudy, but there is always sunlight behind every cloud, ready to shine again. They also learned that love is about giving without expecting anything back and receiving without conditions. Love should flow from the heart like a never-ending river. And so, the film ends. The moral lesson from this film is always double-check the number before you save it, cause miscommunication might just set your love life on a 13-year detour. And if you're ever in doubt, a heartfelt letter and a bike ride can fix just about anything, even if it takes over a decade.